I am Jenny Crane, and I'm here to do my fourth video for the osteopathy techniques for Tom Mays. This is his fourth class that I will be representing today, and from that class I will actually be representing three different techniques. So the first of the three techniques I'm going to attempt to work on here today are chakras. I'm going to show you how chakras work, how to work them on yourself, and then how to work them on the horse. The second topic we're going to discuss today is going to be the master flow. Master flow is something that Tom has identified himself, but it is an extremely great tool, especially for the hindgut issues. And finally, for the third topic that I'll be presenting today, I will be working on what we call lymph and working with the spleen as a router for moving lymph. So to start out, I'm going to introduce my friend here. This is Trinco. He is a 19-year-old Lusitano stallion, so we won't be working on any gelding scars today. He is a very good boy usually, but he certainly needs a bit of a pacifier. So hopefully, he definitely wanted to do this today with me, so hopefully he's a good boy and we can just work our way through it. For those of you who are out there working with clients, you'll know that not every horse is perfect. They're not all going to stand still or move when you need them to move. So it's actually very good to do demonstrations or to work with different types of horses and to get your hands on as many horses as you possibly can. So like I said in the beginning, I'm going to work on three topics. The first of the three topics that I'll be doing today are chakras. Now, chakras are something a little bit more on, I want to say, the advanced side of things, or woo-woo side, if that's what you have to look at it as. But chakras really, I find, are extremely helpful. If I can work on a chakra, or work on chakras on horses before I begin the osteopathy techniques, it actually brings me that much farther forward in the process of treating the horse. It's really working with that light body. And there's a lot of practitioners out there who work on the light body, who work on energy, and all of it is fantastic, all of it is good. The more any of us can do of that work, I think the better our planet is going to be. But it needs to be validated, it needs to be truthful as well. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of scientific proof that chakras work, or at least not to my knowledge, that chakras have a significant effect. But if I work on them myself or I work them on horses, it definitely has some impact to it, and you can feel it too. So the first thing I want to do is just to show you how you can become more familiar with your chakras. Generally, you want to be in a beautiful natural place with beautiful trees or a nice lake nearby, nice and quiet area, but reality is not many of us are able to find that type of situation. So when I work with chakras, and I live in a fairly large city in California, when I work with the chakras, I really am either next to my fountain in my home, or if I don't have that ability, I will actually go ahead and hi Trinco, I will use my flower essences or my oils or something like that to really just clear my aura, clear any sort of the negativity around me before and after, and even during going through my chakras. Generally there are 7 chakras. Of course, you have chakras in your hands and feet and legs that we won't go into. So in general, the 7 main chakras are basically up along the center of your body or along the axis of your body. To start out with, I'm actually going to show you my third chakra and how I work with it. Chakras generally move in a clockwise fashion, and they each have their own colors to them. So starting out from the bottom, you have your root chakra, the first chakra, and that's generally red. Then you go up to your second chakra, which is orange. And the reason I'm giving you these colors is sometimes it's actually helpful when you work with the horses if they're more color centric. It's actually good to show them or ask them for their color. Then you go up to your third chakra, which is right around your solar plexus. For the horses, it's right around the bottom of their diaphragm, where the diaphragm actually is connecting back up to the lumbar region, thoracic and lumbar region. That one is yellow. Then you get to your heart chakra. Generally, I believe that's a bluish color, at least in my mind. It's a beautiful blue color. Then you get into your neck chakra. That's what I'm up to your fifth chakra. That's where your voice is. That is actually going to be somewhat of a greenish, emeraldish color. At least that's what I get from it. And then a crystalline blue is basically your sixth chakra, your third eye, some people call it. And then finally your seventh chakra is a little bit off the body. It's opening your head. You can almost think of it as connecting directly to your pineal gland. Anyways, in each one of those chakras, not only do they affect the organs in that area, but they're also going to be affecting emotions. So you've heard in other Tom's classes where we start working with emotions and asking for the organs, especially like the lung is a great example, anger, right? So that's going to be along your third chakra. So if you're angry, that's going to be entailing your liver, it's going to be entailing your stomach, your upper digestive areas, gallbladder, so on and so forth. But it also, anger, lower intuition, back issues. I can go on and on with these lists. He's just determined here, isn't he? He's determined to play. So as I work with my third chakra here, I'm just going to come in, I'm going to find it first. It's very similar to, if you remember, and you're going to need this also for the master flow, right? If you remember as a child, you'd go in and you'd start playing with that energy bubble. You start pushing energy in with your hands and start forming that bubble and start feeling it. That's kind of what you're looking for with chakras, only it's a little bit more definite. So I come in and I just start asking for where that chakra is. I first want to be standing. This is also something Tom really gets into in his later classes, is you've got to be standing correctly as well. So you've got to have, if you notice my side, I'm going to bring my pelvis just as if you were riding. You're going to want to actually open up your hip angle, bring your tailbone under, Trinko. Bring your tailbone under and really balance yourself. And that's really to open up your hara, that root chakra area. So I'm going to come into a clockwise motion first, just to start contacting my chakras. So I'm going to move to the side here. And you can see I'm going to come in, I'm just going to feel for that balance. And this is what you can do to help practice. You're going to come in, you're going to feel for it. Feel where it is. Okay, so it's a little bit lower than where my hand was originally. It's right about here. And then I'm going to come into a clockwise motion. And I generally spin it 3 times, 6 times, or 9 times, depending upon the amount of time that I have. And then I'll stop, and then I'll do a counterclockwise. And this is what we're going to do on the horse. I'm going to go counterclockwise, and where I feel there's gunk, where I feel there's slowness, right here it's for me, I hold that, and I let it unwind. So just as we did in the craniosacral classes, we're going to look at unwinding and the mechanisms behind that. So I'm just going to hold it with a nice gentle compassion, and I'll let him wander off for a second. And I can actually feel it in my body, and that's what you're looking for when you practice on yourself. Because how you're feeling on yourself is how he's going to feel it on himself. And wait for that release. And there it goes. So I actually felt physical release in my own body. And then I'm going to close that chakra. Oops. Oh, I know. We're going to get to you in a second here, buddy. I'm going to close that chakra by going again in a clockwise motion. So it's clockwise and counterclockwise is to work on it. So I'm going to close it using clockwise. Okay, so coming to Trinko. With Trinko, I will tell you that I've already done some pre-work with him. I have melded with him using the GV26 as well as his yin tang point here. I have worked on his subclavian, his heart, his kale, his vena cava, as well as his vena cava hiatus and his liver, and I've worked up his vena cava all the way to just about the kidney area. So I have done some pre-work on him so I could get directly to the work that I want to do with you today and show you today. So when I'm first coming to a horse and I'm wanting to know, what sort of chakra am I going to look at, I do come into that yin-tang point. This is another great exercise. And I just ask. And I can ask for some grounding and see where it starts getting stuck. And for me, it starts getting stuck right around chakras 2 and 3. So he's being very nice, and he's moving out for us. Let me get you this like you, buddy. So what I can do here is I can generally just rub my hand about, or run my hand about, as I start feeling for them. They're kind of, you can feel them, they're kind of bumpy, so I'm right above his 3rd chakra right here. I'm going to move back to his 2nd chakra, find out where that is. And if you notice, my hand, I'm trying to keep it as loose as possible, relaxed as possible, and just start feeling the boundaries of where it is. Is it centered? Is it not? This one, I feel like it's more at an angle here, so it's actually coming in this way on him. So it's not directly over his spinal cord where it needs to be, or his sacrum where it needs to be. And then his root chakra, generally if I had time, I would start and work on the root chakra first. I do like to do that, give them a good grounding. I know some people start at chakra 7. Either way works. Yeah. Okay, so the problem that I'm seeing is definitely over his 3rd chakra and, his 2nd chakra and his 3rd chakra. So I'm going to come into his 2nd chakra first. Remember, this one is kind of not in the right place. It's a little bit more over on that realm. So I'm going to come around the other side of him because I'm going to want to get a good angle. And I'm just going to come here, make sure that I'm holding on to him with at least one hand. Find that chakra again. There it is. So now I'm going to go in a counterclockwise motion here and let him take me. Now if you noticed, I did not first address it in a clockwise fashion. I'm going counterclockwise. So I was going clockwise, I'm sorry. So I was doing clockwise and now I'm going counterclockwise here. I'm just finding it, and it's definitely over here. So I'm going to hold this area and I'm just going to ask with compassion and grace for balance, alignment. He is a stallion, so I'm not too concerned about gelding scars. I'm starting to have a little reaction here. You can feel it. He's licking and chewing. So this is kind of deep and it's kind of aimed at, I almost want to say his bladder. Okay? So I'm going to come down, and it's on actually the right dorsal side of his bladder, which I'm on his left, but that's the energetic pull that I'm getting. So I want to come over, and I'm letting my hand dive down, take that elevator ride down, and then I'm actually going to spin him a little bit. There it goes. Good boy. Good boy. I'm going to come back here. Now whatever I was feeling, it seemed like it was his bladder. There it goes. So you see how my hand is now being taken a little bit more central. And I'm still going in that counterclockwise motion. It may not have been his bladder. I think it was a little more dorsal than his bladder, but it was shooting out some energy that was throwing his chakra off to the right. So now I'm not feeling too much hindrance, but there's another kind of stuck area right about here. So I can hold this area and let it unwind. And then when I put my hand on, basically what I'm doing is I'm asking and treating that area with the chakra itself. I'm asking that chakra to come into the body. Come back here. I like to keep their heads bent, especially when I'm in their hind end area. That way that if they do decide to kick out, it won't be as difficult for me. Or they can't kick out because they don't have their balance. There it goes. So I'm feeling a lot of unwinding in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and close that chakra up. Let his head go. And now I'm going to go in a clockwise motion to close it. There it goes. And just follow the speed that it needs to go at. There it goes. Nice. Okay, so now I'm going to come to his third chakra. Again, I'm going to ask where it is. Right about here. And I'm going to go in a clockwise motion. Well, actually, let's do a clockwise motion first. First, check it out. Let's go around 3 times. Okay. See, now it's moving actually quite a bit faster than his second chakra. But now I'm going to actually take it, I'm going to stop. So similar to a record, I'm going to spin that record backwards with as much compassion and grace and understanding that I can. Come back to myself, relax my knees, really open up that hip angle so that I'm balanced. And I'm going to ask him for his color of a yellow right now. There it goes. So right here. So again, it's on the left side. He has something going on. Oh, it's a little more forward than that. Okay. I'm going to come a little here. There it is. It's actually right about here. So I'm asking that chakra to come down and help treat the tissues, sending my chi, the universe Reiki down into that location and letting it just unwind. There it goes. So I'm just following. It has it's not a chaotic movement, but it's a very kind of backwards, forwards, snake-like movement. There he goes. Nice. Now if he'll let me, I'm going to come up here again. I'm going to come up to his third chakra. I'm going to run it again in a counterclockwise, see if there's anything else I need to focus on or at least stress in this session, and I'm not feeling it. He seems a lot more relaxed. So now I'm going to go and close it using a clockwise motion. Now, if he participates with this, we'll see if he doesn't get too bored. Hey, buddy. Come on. Come on. What are you looking at? He needed a stick. Okay. So if he doesn't get too bored with this, I'm going to actually work on both the chakras at the same time. So I'm going to come in, and I'm going to move them in a counterclockwise motion. Oh, together. So this is treating 2 of them at the same time. And I would stay away from the hind end on this one. I have had experiences where the horses were stuck with a hindgut issue and just they felt this was very uncomfortable and kicked out at me. So I'm asking these chakras to work together, and you'll want to do this to all the chakras. Okay, now I'm just going to move them in a clockwise. There we go. So they're moving at different speeds, and that's okay. There we go. Now we're matching them up. Matching them up. Okay. There you go. So with chakras, you just want to basically follow them, follow the energy, follow how they work. But be sure that you figure out how they work on yourself as well. You'll feel how your body is moving and adjusting to that energy field being worked. So my next demonstration here is going to be the master flow. So this is basically the peristalsis movement of the hindgut. But you can use it in so many different ways. It's a much deeper, more earthbound energy from what I find than what craniosacral is, or any of the other roles that you might find in the body. And I do have a theory. Tom doesn't really get into a lot of discussion, so I'd be more than happy to discuss this with anybody in the classes or what have you. Who want to discuss this, and I could be completely wrong, but I have a theory about this. We are a ratio of the planet. We are a ratio of the earth. We are a planet within ourselves. Trinco is a planet within himself, right? So we all run on our axis. The earth, so we are in the northern hemisphere, and if you're looking from outer space, looking at the earth, you'll see that the earth itself is moving in a counterclockwise motion. And this is from the north. You're going to see the earth is moving in a counterclockwise motion. I don't know if this will work for the southern hemisphere or not. That's moving in a clockwise motion. So we're counterclockwise, southern is clockwise. So with him, this peristalsis movement, it is a counterclockwise motion. At least that's how I'm feeling it. And I'm feeling it as a very deep earth healing movement itself. So now when I do I'm sorry, buddy, I know. I'm being a very good boy. I know. This is so boring, isn't it? I'm talking too much. So when I'm working, especially on hindgut issues, I want to start doing the master flow somewhere around like T15 all the way down. So I'm working on that ascending colon and the rectum primarily. I'm going to be standing on the left side. The master flow itself, when you start working with it, is going to come up the left side. It's going to start, you're going to feel it kind of moving around down here, and then you have to kind of ask for it, and then it will start working. But again, as a ratio of the planet itself, if the planet takes 24 hours to go in a full circle, 360, so does the horse. And I'm sorry if I'm not getting my mouth right. Counted up to nerves for the video, but so does the horse. And so do we. But it's not going to be a very fast motion. So it's going to come up from the left here, and then there'll be a bit of a pause, right about here, and then it's going to come over to the right, and then it's going to be a bit of a pause, just as what you might find in your flexion extension of the craniosacral rhythm. There's going to be that pause, and then it's going to come back down again. But then it's also, you're going to feel that caudal motion of it. So it's like the gut is moving this way, then to the right, and then a little bit back, and then down around again. So now some people can see this energy itself, but you may have to feel it, you may have to fake it until you make it. To really work with this. I've practiced this for quite some time now, so it's not something that you get right away. So I think Trinco is ready here. So I'm going to go ahead and stand, and well, first I want to merge. I'm just going to feel and make sure that I can quickly merge into that ascending colon. Let me find it. There it is. And the reasons we're doing this a lot, the Masterflow is great for adhesion lesions. So what is an adhesion lesion? Well, humans get them too. An adhesion lesion is basically where the organs are not sliding against each other easily. They are getting stuck. And the problem with that is it starts creating some scar tissue. It starts creating, really, there it is, lockup of some energies. And it could also prevent any blood getting to the organ itself. So it's stopping that movement. They're going to have trouble digesting. In really severe cases, all those tissues can actually start coming in and basically starting to collapse the rectum and the ascending colon to where you're going to start having diarrhea. Or if it's really bad, that's when you get into colic situations. So the Masterflow is extremely helpful for any kind of horses having those issues, or horses in the past who've had colic issues. I would certainly recommend learning this. Again, this is a Tom Mays special technique. So I'm going to feel it. Actually, I'm going to come over with this hand because this is going to be my treatment hand, so I want to make sure I feel it here. I'm going to ask for it. Again, you have to be very calm and patient with this. So I'm asking for the Masterflow. Here it comes. So it's still kind of on the ground. It's moving its way up. It's not yet to my hand. And there it is. So it's at my hand, my right hand. So you see how slow it's going. I'm even moving probably faster than what it is. So it's pushing my hand up, and then it's pausing right about here. Now it's moving over. I'm asking, okay, where do I want my hand? And it's going to come over here. And there it is. Okay. So I got a little bit of it. Let's try it again. This is, so now we're going to wait for it. It has to come all around again. I'm actually going to try it with this hand and meld into that next area. So once you start using it, it starts actually working a little bit faster. There it goes. And down again. So if you notice my body, I'm pretty close to his hind leg. I'm about as close as I can, again, for safety purposes. There it comes. Feel it. Okay, it wants me to come a little farther back onto the actual rectum here. And there we go. Try it one more time, Trinko. Okay. So again, this is a big patience, and you'll get it. Okay, so it's coming up. I'm just putting my hands here to see if I can feel the movement better. There it goes. Asking where it wants my hand. Here. goes. Come on. There it goes. Okay. Okay. So that is your master flow. You can use the master flow in many different areas. If you want to use it in the liver, you actually kind of skip you skip the last step where it comes up and over onto the right side, and it pauses right as it starts heading down. That's when you snag it on the liver. You can use it just about in any organ. I've had a lot of success using it on the cecum. In fact, that's probably the best area for me that I find that it has really, really worked. Okay, so let us go ahead and start working on the spleen. So the spleen, if we think about where the spleen is located, the spleen actually, so if this is the diaphragm, if I build the diaphragm here, up along here, right, if this is the diaphragm, the spleen is going to sit up against the diaphragm. It's going to be right around, so if we count back from the last rib here, so 18, 17, 16, this is basically where the spleen is located, and it's huddled up right against the diaphragm. It has ligaments that attach it to the stomach, that ligament that attaches to the pancreas, and as well as the kidney. So the spleen is a major, well, it's actually only a secondary organ when it comes to lymph. When you think about lymph, when you really want to work on lymph, it's generally the thymus and bone marrow. Those are the first two primary organs. Then the other organs would be the spleen, the lymph nodes, as well as the thoracic duct. So for the spleen is, like I said, it's kind of a secondary, but in Chinese medicine, you'll find that the spleen itself is almost the primary organ of lymph. So with that and combining these techniques, when you work on lymph, you're going to use the spleen as basically a router, just as you might with the heart. So with the spleen, too, because we know lymph has so much to do with oh, there you go. Guess you need some spleen work, huh? The spleen has so much to do with the immune system. You can also check out some of the acupressure points. So one of the biggest master acupressure point is your spleen 21. So your spleen 21, how are you going to find that? Is you're going to basically take your last rib right about the angle of his shoulder here. So it's somewhere along here. And I'm going to find, you can come to the 11th rib, but it's actually the intercostal space, so between 10 and 11. So here's his last rib. I'm going to count back. So 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, and 10. So it's right in here. So now what I can do is I can kind of, if I poke him here, he's paying a little more attention to the camera person here. If I poke him, he's not having too much of a reaction, but I'm feeling, if I lighten my hand up using my pericardial finger, asking for that rhythm, the acupressure rhythm, I'm not getting too much. I'm going to come around and do the same thing on the other side. So let's find, oh, I know it, I'm sorry, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, so right there. This one I think is hotter than his other one. So I'm going to come in with my pericardial finger. I'm actually going to come up to T17, to the actual association point on the bladder meridian. Let me do that again here, so it's right here. I'm just going to hold these 2 points. So these points, as opposed to the left side, these points are actually hotter. And again, we're doing this as an immune response. If you, it's the master overload of the immune system. This is what spleen 21 works as. Yeah, okay, so I'm feeling a lot of movement here. Hold still, buddy. And when you know an acupressure point is starting to work, it's almost like you have, I lost it. You have a mountain starting to build under your hands. So, again, very lightly. And acupressure points, sometimes it's better to have them tied up for this. He's kind of meandering a little bit here. Okay, so I'm starting to get a bit of a rhythm on my top, the bladder meridian, the spleen point for the bladder meridian. And I'm thinking I need to move my hands forward just a little bit. Again, trust your hands for the placement of these acupressure points. There it goes. Took a nice deep breath. Okay, so now the rhythm itself is starting to increase, especially on the top hand. And the skin itself is starting to grow on the bottom hand. It's actually coming out into a little bit of a mountain. Hey, buddy, hang in there. Hang in there with me. There it is. So I'm really going to sink into that acupressure point. And I'm going to bend his head, come up and grab his head. Think about energy. Putting chi. Thinking about some energy like coming out from behind me, my, not just my energy, just the universal energy, asking for your guides, your, whoever, angels, his ancestors, whoever you work with, and asking to flow it into that acupressure point. There we go. How's that, buddy? Asking him to relax, open his jaw a little bit. Okay? Yeah. Good boy. Okay. So back on this side, back on his left side, the spleen is on the left side. Now I have not cleared the venous flow of the spleen yet, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. I have worked on the heart kale. So I'm going to come to the heart kale, pick up the venous flow again, so that's the caudal movement. And my other hand is, I'm going to ask for the blood to go through the splenic vein up into the vena cava, but actually I'm going to aim it towards the right dorsal lobe of his liver. So I'm relaxing my body. I'm going to try to relax into him. This is something that I know I have to work on, is just relaxing myself. Feeling that motion, there it goes. So I know when to nudge. That's always a question that we get when we get to Tom's classes. When do you apply that nudge? Generally, you apply the nudge when you start feeling the tissues start to vibrate. So you start feeling movement, you start feeling the tension. And so I'm starting to feel some tension here. I'm using the heart roll to kind of build up that tension. And I'm being probably too subtle for my hands for demonstration here. So I'll start moving my hand a little bit more. And so my heart hand I'm going to start finding that venous, the cranial caudal roll, or the cowl, C-A-O-L, cowl of the heart. And with my right, I'm basically holding tension right at the dorsal aspect of the spleen. And I'm holding tension there, asking the blood to move. So there's a lot of tension. I'm going to have to bend him, so I'm going to take my left hand off. And just a second here to bend him and nudge him. Make sure that the tension is right. So right there it goes. So the tension is, he's building tension. A couple more routes up here. He's releasing, but I want a bigger release than that. Bring him in. There it goes. Again, going up towards that dorsal lobe of the liver. And there it goes. Good boy. Good boy. Let's come back and check it again. Betty. There it goes. Okay, so I'm going to come down to more the apex of the spleen. I find that also gets stuck. So again, I'm going to actually bring the blood up in his organ, but I can also shoot it directly from here. And the spleen, I should have mentioned, so it comes around an apex right around T10, T9, so it's actually wrapping all the way around here. It's a very large organ, and I wouldn't say it's in a tear shape, but it does have an apex there at the bottom. So it's not moving very nicely, at least the venous flow, towards the bottom, so I am going to create some tension and flow it up to the top. There it goes. Oh, right here. There you go. Ready, buddy? There it goes. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. So usually it takes at least 3 good steps when you're doing some nudging. And what I was feeling is I got down deeper into that splenic vein, and I could feel my hands kind of go around and grasp the vein itself. What? This? And that so I'm just flowing with this right now. I'm sorry, this he was asking me to do this again, so oh well, he's showing me that his energy is moving a lot better towards his back end. So let me get a little bit in a safer position here, so in case he does throw his head. There we go. Find the off-ramp. There it is. Okay. He doesn't want to let go. You let go now? Good slobbery horse. Okay, so now with the spleen, the next thing I'm going to do is I want to make sure, because I'm going to use that as a router, I want to make sure the movement, the mobility is good. So similar to the heart, you have that cranial caudal movement of the kale. Same thing here. Getting some good yawns from him. So I'm coming in, and you can use 1 hand or 2 hands, depending on the horse and how much control you need to have of them. So what I'm getting here, it has a decent swing, but it doesn't necessarily want to swing forward. So that cranial movement is not great. Now in the foundational classes, Tom teaches us to come down here to the xiphoid process and connect the two. And you could really start feeling the energy build there. But in the osteo classes, what we want to do too is to make sure that that swing really is free, that it's not hindered. And for me, you know, if I can demonstrate here, it's like he's coming here, he's swinging well here, but then he's like locking cranially. So he's locking up against his diaphragm. And we already know from earlier testing that he has a bit of an issue with his left diaphragm. I did not do vagus nerve, nor did I do the esophageal hiatus, so that could also be a bit of a problem. So we're going to come here, and I'm going to actually first ask it to go into the more of a caudal swing. So I'm coming here, caudal swing, and holding it out in the caudal swing a little bit more. Caudal swing. So I'm going to the area of least restriction. Okay, now I'm going to go into the area of greater restriction. There we go. I think it was just finding everything interesting to eat on this floor. Okay, I'm going to hold it. Okay. Oh. So I'm going to really ask it to start swinging more into that caudal movement. Okay. So I'm actually coming energetically, and it's a little stuck, so I'm going to actually come in, work with maybe the master flow or what have you, and move that spleen off. There it goes. Okay, so it's moving a little bit better now. I can use it as a router. Okay, so what we have here is what we're going to start using the spleen for in the cranial, when the moves cranially, which now it's moving a lot nicer. When it moves cranially, I'm going to ask the lymph to come through the thoracic duct. If I draw the thoracic duct, it comes somewhere along here, down into the left subclavian. Now, the thing to note about this thoracic duct, it's only on the left side. So if you're routing any sort of lymph on the right side, you're going to route it to the thoracic duct here on the left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first come, so on top of the spleen we have this cisterna chili. I may be mispronouncing that, but basically it's a reservoir for lymph that before it goes into that thoracic duct, before it moves into the thoracic duct, it basically holds it and it runs right along the aorta, and it follows the aorta kind of in a reverse direction through the aorta hiatus. So that's where the aorta goes through the diaphragm. Again, it's mostly caudal, usually right around, for this guy, where is it? Yeah, so his is like right around T17, T18 area. That's where his aorta hiatus, so his cisterna chili sits kind of right along that side. And so I'm going to have one hand running the spleen as a router. So here's the movement of the spleen. And it kind of rolls, if I exaggerate it, this is the true roll of it. It's not just a this way, it's a roll. Okay? He's a 3D animal. So I'm going to use that caudal roll to start clearing the lymph. And lymph is, to me, I mean, when you talk to therapists, human therapists, craniosacral therapists, we're all taught that lymph has kind of a waltzing feel to it. It's lighter, it dances. In Tom's world, we're using a router first off with the spleen, but it's also, yeah, he's a little stuck here, so he's over there licking and chewing. It's also, there it goes. It's an osteopathic technique, so it's a deep technique. The lymph, when I feel it, his isn't as gummy as I've seen some horses. Some horses, you get that whole phlegmy feel to it. And I believe that lymph, to some extent, is phlegm. Or maybe it's a component, it's a very strong component of phlegm. But his isn't awful, it's kind of a clear, fluid feel to it. There he goes. Hang in there with me, buddy. So, I'm just going to move it along using that cranial motion. It's a little stuck here. So all I'm doing is clearing the thoracic duct first, and then you can actually start looking at some of the other lymph nodes, especially in the pelvic area, and that's where you have the whole inguinal area. The inguinal area has, obviously, especially if he was a gelding, you would want to check it out, the lymph in that area, make sure it's clear if you're going to be working on gelding scars. There it goes. I'm going to move it here. Okay, I'm going to actually step more towards his hindgut on the switch hands, just more for ergonomic reasons as well. So it's not, unless you get a real stuck area, you don't need a lot of movement from him. Lymph is moved by movement. So really use your judgment when it's necessary for you to actually do a nudge. Now I'm thinking I need a nudge here. That's probably why I'm talking about it. So hold on, buddy. Let me get your head. Come here. Get your head. There's nothing down there, Trinko, I promise. There's nothing down there. Okay, so I'm going to find that lymph again. I know the spleen movement. I can even hook it up again here real quick. Move your head up. Come on. And there it is. So, where is it getting stuck? There it is. Okay, I think it's getting stuck kind of right where the aorta, if you have the aorta, it's coming up here, comes along here. He may need me to do his aorta. So I wasn't planning on doing that. Let me just think about it real quick here. There it goes. Yeah, I know you hurt there, buddy. There it goes. So when you're not getting something, easily, ask yourself why. What's in the way? Okay, so yeah, so I'm coming up right kind of where that bend is in the aorta. Yeah, okay, so I just got a nice flutter from him. So I'm using the cranial movement, the cranial roll of the heart. And I'm dragging, if you want to think of it, dragging the blood away from his heart. There it goes. And I can feel it underneath my hands, basically kind of a rebounding motion within the aorta itself. It's like I almost want to say like a bouncy ball going through his aorta. I'm feeling a bunch of bubbling. Let me get stuck right about here. You okay, Trinko? You know, sometimes I think also of basically pulling that aorta out of his heart, stretching it to get the kinks out. That's one way to look at it. You can also think about bringing it up into your hands. So instead of diving down into the body for it, you can bring it up into your hands. Another concept that people like to use too is sticking your fingers in the aorta. Think about moving your hands through that aorta to clear it. And I know this is very indirect. Obviously, we're not in the body, but it's a very powerful image. There we go. Got that. Okay. I'm going to come back to the lymph again. So again, I'm going to feel his spleen. And I'm just going to start routing using the cranial movement of the spleen, that thoracic duct. There it goes, nice. So I'm feeling more freedom of movement through that thoracic duct now. It's not tight. I can feel the fluid moving through it. Again, it's not a blood, it's a very slow movement because there's no, it works on muscle contraction, right? The heart pumps the oxygen-rich blood throughout the body, and there are actual little valves in the veins to I wouldn't say help move along the blood through the veins, but the circulatory system at least has that motion of the heart. The lymph really doesn't. So even though I'm using the spleen here to drive it, that's more of a that's more of an Eastern medicine concept, but it works. So it's going to come over here over the shoulder, and then it's going to dive into a subclavian. So of course it's getting stuck right before it starts working its way down. Good boy. Oh, I know. Let's see here. I want to show you real quick. Let's go ahead and get him evened up here. So I wanted to show you real quick. So you notice how for most things when I'm working the spleen forward, I want to, obviously everything with lymph, and I should have mentioned this before, has to go to the heart. Any kind of movement you do with lymph, you are always headed towards that subclavian vein, the left subclavian vein. But if I'm going to be working lymph in his rear end, instead of pumping it using the cranial motion of the spleen, I'm going to be using the caudal motion. And I find too, when I start working lymph, especially along any kind of celiac nodes here, I feel sometimes, you know, and you have to, it's different for every horse. I haven't found any consistent pattern yet myself. But you ask for the lymph. Hey, Trinko, where are you going, buddy? Where are you going? Let's move him away. I think he's trying to work his way out. So, again, sometimes it's better when you work lymph to have them tied. But, so I'm going to find out, I'm going to come into his organs, his gut. This is right around his pelvic flexure. And I'm going to find those celiac nodes. And I'm going to start feeling them out where they are. And feeling, so the cranial or caudal movement of his spleen, which way are they going? They're actually moving on the caudal side. So I'm feeling lymph move when I feel feel the spleen move caudally. And what I'm going to be aiming for is that cisterna chili. For anything pelvic-wise, instead of moving it towards subclavian, I'm going to move it towards that cisterna chili, which sits right on top of the spleen, on the dorsal aspect of the spleen, right next to the aorta. So there it goes. There it goes. And I always, always remember to do any sort of lymph around the sacrum. Something I should also mention, a lot of the lymph nodes and ducts, the lymph nodes and ducts, they run right alongside of nerves. So if you're having difficulty getting a nerve, try working on the lymph first. There we go. So I'm going to come here to a sacrum. And again, I'm moving my hand. When it moves caudally, I'm asking for the lymph, especially around his sacrum, to move towards that cisterna chili. There we go. Okay, so it's going to, we have a little bit of stuck right kind of under L5. There he goes. Okay. Trinko. Are you biting my camera person? Trinko, come on. Sometimes I find that when horses are looking to release, they're going to come after you because they just don't know how to release, or it feels uncomfortable to them. So it's almost like a horse kicking them or biting them because they're angry. If they're feeling something in their body they can't explain, either they react angrily, or they look like they're teasing you. They're teasing you like a five-year-old, 4 or 5-year-old. They've got to get that energy out somehow. And that's what we all should be doing. You know, if we feel anything uncomfortable, any kind of energy, and he's licking and chewing, so we got the spot. That's how anybody should be reacting. So if you see something major, trauma, whatever, the more you release that energy, the better you are. It's like you don't want to hold anger. If you hold anger, it just starts festering, and it's actually physically festering in your body. So I believe that's all I wanted to do with lymph today. Lymph, even though you might not need this, or there's no real significant nodes in the legs, it's lymph nodes in the legs. When you see a horse stalking up, basically it's because of lymph. It's not moving, and that has a lot to do with albumin, or basically the fats that are produced by, I want to say, by like the liver and other organs that are released into the bloodstream. And if we don't have that fat, then the blood can't hold on to the water, and the water seeps out in the interstitial tissues around the veins, capillaries, venules, so on and so forth, and it just starts releasing, and so you're releasing water basically into the cells, around the cells, that it doesn't belong there, so you kind of have to come back, and lymph is a great way. So if you have a horse that's stocking up, and I'll just quickly show you, you can take, again, I want to take the caudal roll of the spleen, and I'm just going to start laying my hands on his legs and just asking that lymph to come up. And if you're comfortable, he's being a good boy now, I can come through and use both hands and thinking about the roll of the spleen that I have basically taken into, I wouldn't say into my body, but I know what that roll is. I can come and start working lymph. What this is great for too, if he'll let me, I can come down here and work at lymph all the way down to his pedal bone or coffin bone. P3. Now he is being a good boy right now. What I'd like to do is just one more technique, if he'll let me. I'd like to show you the Shopar. So the Shopar movement, basically what that is there is an energy between, if you think about that first layer of carpal bones, right in between here, if I'm using my pericardial finger, I'm going to come in, I'm going to feel a figure 8. But first let's check these bones out. So I'm going to come here. Up. Okay. So I'm going to stretch his leg out. Stretch out. And I just want to make sure these bones are straight. There we go. Okay. I'm going to come over here. There we go. Okay. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rest my leg. Rest his leg on my leg. Come on, relax. Relax, buddy. And I'm going to feel that figure 8. There it is. So it's a little deep. His bones may not be straight. Okay, there it is. So it's actually releasing heat already, just from his Shopar point. But what this allows me to do is it will allow me to treat. It will allow me to treat parts of his leg. So if I feel, let me get it again, if I feel that figure 8 movement stop anywhere where I move my hand, like that, I know that's an issue. And what you can do is you can, if he'll hold his leg here, I can connect these 2 points. So I want to say it's his deep digital flexor here. Deep digital flexor, sorry. There it is. So the Shopar point, it basically stopped with where my hand was. Come on, you're doing fine, buddy. Hang in there. And by doing this, if there is any issues, it will certainly help heal them faster. And so what I'm waiting for is for that figure 8 to start again. Hang in there. You're doing good, buddy. Where are you going? Good, hang in there. So I'm just feeling along. Where does it stop? Oh. So let's actually think about this coffin. Let's go to P1. There we go. Okay, so it's a little rotated. Hang in there, buddy. Now, some horses you won't be able to do this with, but I've also found that even the most aggravated horse, just working this point will calm them down. Even though he's not really that aggravated, I think he's bored. There we go. You're twisted, buddy. Hang in there. Okay. Set your foot down. So I'm feeling some twist in his foot here. So just using craniosacral therapy, I'm coming in and finding where that twist is and asking it to come out laterally. There it goes. So if you have a horse with navicular issues or even with laminitis, just by learning craniosacral therapy, you can help them heal quite a bit faster. And there have even been students in Tom's classes who have been able to move the coffin bones. So it is possible, and I would recommend that, you know, whatever you learn in the craniosacral world, bring it to your horse's feet. There we go. So it's throbbing a little bit on the medial aspect, medial dorsal aspect of the coffin bone. There he goes. And if I knew more about chakras for feet, this might be a good thing to do with horses. I might actually have to start playing with that. There it comes. Okay, so it's kind of twisting more, rotating. Is it counterclockwise? Oh, now it's going back. So I find very often that things will go first into the area of greatest restriction and then find their balance point. So his foot went like this, and then it came back to balance. And so you want to find that balance point. Now, while I'm here, I can start thinking about all those wonderful blood tissues, all that tissue in and around his hoof. So I'm thinking lymph, I'm thinking blood, and I'm just asking, I'm pumping it up towards his heart. So you don't see my hands, but if I can demonstrate it largely, I'm moving them up, always towards the heart. And you'll find in massage, and that's something that we're taught in massage too, is just to compress upwards. But here, with my intent, and intent is all powerful, I'm asking for the blood, I'm asking for lymph to come out of the leg, to move up to the heart. And if you have thermal images, if you're able to get thermal images of your horse, or if you have a thermal camera, this is something I would personally love to play with, is take pictures before and after I work on a horse. I think that would be just so fascinating. And I do know a couple of people who have thermal cameras, so I might have to work with them. Yeah, how's that, buddy? Okay. Are we done with you, Trinko? What do you think? Okay, well, I want to thank you very, very much for taking a look at this video. This again is for my class for the Osteo 4 for Tom May's class. Let me repeat that, make sure I'm very clear about this. So this video is for Tom May's Osteo 4 class. If you have any questions, for those of you who are in class with me, please feel free to ask. I love talking to people about this work. I'm very passionate about it, and I would, like I said, I'd really like to hear from you. So thank you, and thank you.